Tasha Williams walked into the gala, her heels clicking sharply against the marble floor. The air in the room was thick with power, wealth, and arrogance. She was used to it by now. But tonight, something felt different. Richard Cooper, a wealthy board member known for his ego, spotted her the moment she entered. He leaned back in his seat, his gaze cutting through her like a knife. "This seat isn't for people like you," he said, loud enough for everyone nearby to hear. His words sliced through the air, followed by a few nervous chuckles from his colleagues. Phones were already coming out, the atmosphere thick with anticipation. Tasha didn't flinch. She simply stood tall, her back straight, her expression neutral. She didn't need to defend herself. Her presence spoke for her. The room fell silent for a moment. "I'm sorry, is there a problem?" she asked calmly, holding up her boarding pass. Richard smirked, a look of superiority plastered across his face. "Cute forgery. You people always try this," he sneered. Tasha didn't react. Not a single muscle in her face moved. She waited. The silence grew heavier. "You don't belong here," Richard continued, trying to break her composure. But still, she said nothing. The staff hesitated, caught between their respect for Richard and their duty to uphold fairness. He wasn't just any rich man. He was a powerful figure in the business world. As the tension in the air thickened, Tasha remained the picture of calm, her posture unwavering. Richard, growing more agitated, stood up and stepped closer, towering over her. "I think you need to leave," he said, his voice dripping with disdain. But Tasha didn't move. Her gaze never left him. "I'm the CEO of Tech Solutions," she finally said, her voice a cool, measured response. Richard blinked, taken aback for the briefest moment. The room fell into a stunned silence. "And I just canceled your company's $200 million sponsorship," she added. Richard's smile faltered, his smug expression vanishing in an instant. He reached for his phone, his hands shaking slightly. The staff was now looking at him, unsure of what to do. Richard's eyes darted around the room, looking for an escape from the uncomfortable spotlight. But it was too late. Tasha had already taken control. She turned on her heel and walked away, leaving Richard frozen in place, speechless. The whispers started, the phones continued to record, and Richard stood there, a man who thought his money and status could protect him, now stripped of his arrogance in a single moment. Tasha stepped into the hotel lobby, the air thick with the weight of success and privilege. Her heels clicked rhythmically on the polished marble floor, but today, they felt louder, as if announcing her presence to every person in the room. Richard Cooper's words echoed in her mind, but she refused to let them distract her. She had bigger things to focus on. As she walked past the towering glass windows of the hotel, her phone buzzed in her pocket. She pulled it out and checked the message. A deal she had been working on for months was about to close. She smiled to herself, knowing how much this would change the trajectory of her company. She had come from nothing, and now she was sitting at the table with some of the biggest names in the industry. Her success wasn't a mistake. It was hard-earned. But as she passed a few familiar faces in the lobby, she could feel their eyes following her. The whispers were subtle, but they were there. Richard wasn't the only one who thought she didn't belong. She reached the elevator, pressed the button, and waited for the doors to open. Inside, the reflection of her calm expression stared back at her. She had learned long ago not to react to people who underestimated her. People like Richard, with their assumptions about what she could and couldn't do, were the reason she fought so hard to get where she was. As the elevator doors slid open, she walked into the conference room, where the deal was set to be finalized. The room was filled with executives, all of them men, all of them with the same smug expression that came with decades of wealth and influence. They hadn't expected her to succeed. They hadn't expected her to be the one in the room, in charge of the next big project. She took her seat at the head of the table, and the room grew quieter. Tasha opened her laptop, connecting to the projector as she glanced at the other executives. They had all tried to undermine her, to push her out, but here she was. She began presenting, her voice steady, clear, commanding the room. As she spoke, about the future of the project, about the numbers, the projections, the vision. She saw the disbelief in their eyes. This wasn't the woman they thought they knew. This wasn't the woman they had tried to push to the margins. As she continued, her words started to shift from business jargon to a quiet, calculated warning. This isn't just about what we can do now, she said, pausing for effect. This is about what I've been building for years, and what I will continue to build. You may not like how I got here, but I'm not going anywhere, and I have the power to make or break any deal in this room. There was a flicker of uncertainty in their eyes. The atmosphere had changed. Tasha was no longer just the token woman in the room. She was a force to be reckoned with. As the meeting came to an end, she stood up, her laptop in hand, and gave them a nod. "Thank you for your time," she said, her voice a mixture of politeness and power. The men were left stunned, a little quieter than before, unsure of how to react. Tasha smiled to herself as she walked out of the room. She had proven them wrong, but more importantly, she had proven something to herself. No one, not even Richard Cooper or anyone else in that room, would ever underestimate her again. Tasha sat at her desk the next morning, staring at the glowing screen in front of her. Her hands were steady, but her mind was racing. The room around her was quiet, the only sound the rhythmic tapping of her fingers on the keyboard. She was preparing to finalize the deal that would take her company to new heights, but something about last night's events kept replaying in her mind. Richard Cooper's words, his arrogance, his assumptions that she was nothing more than a token woman in a man's world. It had all been too much. She had fought her way to the top, but the feeling of triumph was still bitter. She wasn't just proving him wrong. She was proving everyone wrong. Her phone buzzed, snapping her out of her thoughts. It was a message from her assistant. "The board meeting is in 30 minutes. Are you ready?" Tasha took a deep breath. It was time to face them. The same executives who had doubted her, the ones who had tried to sideline her, were now looking to her for answers. She had the power now, and she wasn't about to let anyone take it away. As she made her way to the conference room, she could feel the weight of their eyes on her. They were waiting for her to stumble, waiting for her to show any sign of weakness. But there would be no weakness. The room was full, and as she stepped inside, all conversations stopped. They were all waiting for her to speak. She walked to the head of the table, where she always sat, and stood there for a moment, scanning the faces in front of her. They had all underestimated her. They thought she was just a pretty face, a token CEO. They were wrong. "Good morning," she said, her voice firm, calm, and commanding. "Let's get started." The meeting began and Tasha took control. She laid out her plans for the future, outlining the strategies that would take the company to new heights. She spoke with the authority of someone who knew exactly what they were doing. As she spoke, she could see the others squirming. They weren't used to this. They weren't used to a woman, especially one like her, taking charge. The conversations from the previous night, the whispers, the doubts, they all seemed so far away now. "You all know what's at stake," Tasha continued, her gaze locking with each executive in the room. "We either move forward with this or we risk falling behind. The choice is yours, but I'm not waiting around for you to decide. This company moves forward, with or without you." The room was silent for a moment, and then the board members began to speak. There was hesitation in their voices, uncertainty, but there was no denying the power in Tasha's words. She had them where she wanted them. The next few minutes were a blur. Tasha presented the numbers, the growth, the new partnerships, and the projections. She answered every question with confidence, her voice unwavering. By the end of the meeting, she had secured their approval. The deal was going through. As she walked out of the conference room, Tasha felt a sense of calm wash over her. She had done it. Not only had she proven herself to Richard Cooper, but she had proven herself to everyone who had ever doubted her. The journey wasn't over, but this was a victory she would savor. It was the start of something new, something bigger, and this time no one could stop her. Tasha stood in front of the window in her office, looking out at the skyline. The sun was setting, casting a warm glow over the city, but her mind was far from the peaceful view. It had been weeks since the board meeting, and her company was growing faster than ever. The deal she had secured was just the beginning, but there was still a part of her that couldn't let go of the past. The way Richard had looked at her, the dismissive tone, the assumption that she didn't belong. She couldn't forget it. She had moved on from it, but it still burned in her chest. Tasha's phone buzzed on her desk, breaking her thoughts. She picked it up, seeing a message from her assistant. Richard Cooper just called. He's asking for a meeting. Wants to discuss the deal. Tasha paused for a moment, her eyes narrowing. Richard had always been the type to play the power game, and now he was reaching out to her? She thought back to the gala, to the way he had tried to humiliate her. What could he possibly want now? She set the phone down and stared at it for a moment. She had already proven herself in the boardroom, but this was different. This wasn't about business anymore. This was personal. Tasha knew she had the upper hand. But how would Richard react when he saw the power she had taken from him? She wasn't the same woman he had mocked that night. She wasn't the same woman he had assumed was just a figurehead. She had changed, and so had her approach. The next day, Tasha walked into the sleek, modern office of Richard Cooper's company. The walls were lined with glass, and the floor gleamed under the bright lights. Richard was waiting for her, a smug smile on his face as he stood up to greet her. "Tasha, good to see you again," he said, his voice oozing with false warmth. "I trust everything is going well with the deal?" Tasha didn't shake his hand. Instead, she took a seat across from him, her posture perfect, her gaze unwavering. "Let's get straight to the point, Richard," she said, her voice calm but firm. "I'm not here for small talk." Richard's smile faltered, and for a moment, there was a flicker of unease in his eyes. He leaned back in his chair, trying to regain control of the conversation. "I see. Well, as you know, the deal is important to both of us. But I've been thinking there's room for improvement. Perhaps we can renegotiate some of the terms. Make it more favorable for my company." Tasha didn't flinch. "Your company?" she repeated, her voice colder now. "You mean the one I just ended your sponsorship with? The one that thought they could undermine me?" Richard's face turned pale, the color draining from his cheeks. He opened his mouth to speak, but the words didn't come. Tasha leaned forward slightly, her eyes locking with his. "Let me make this clear. The sponsorship is done. There's no renegotiation. And don't think for a second that you can push me around anymore. You don't control the narrative here. I do." Richard's arrogance had completely evaporated. He sat there, stunned, unsure of how to respond. Tasha stood up, ready to leave, but before she turned to walk out, she paused. "Oh, and by the way," she added, her voice almost a whisper, "I hope you enjoy your time at the top while it lasts, because it won't last much longer." She turned and walked out, leaving Richard Cooper speechless and powerless. As she walked back to her car, Tasha felt the weight of the past few weeks lifting off her shoulders. She had shown him who was in control. She had shown him who she truly was, and now nothing could stop her. Tasha sat at her desk, her mind still racing after the meeting with Richard. The weight of the past few weeks seemed to lift off her shoulders, but there was something else brewing inside her. She had done what she needed to do, but the taste of victory was bittersweet. She had come so far, but there was always more to achieve. More challenges, more obstacles, and she had no intention of stopping. The phone on her desk buzzed, snapping her back to the present. It was her assistant again. "Tasha, there's someone here to see you. A Mr. Davis from the investment firm. He says it's urgent." Tasha glanced at the clock. She hadn't planned any meetings for the afternoon, but she wasn't about to turn down an opportunity. "Send him in," she replied, her voice steady. A few moments later, the door opened, and a man in a sharp suit stepped in. He looked mid-40s, with dark hair and glasses, and he carried an air of quiet authority. "Ms. Williams, it's a pleasure to meet you," he said, extending a hand. "I'm Michael Davis. I represent one of your largest investors." Tasha shook his hand, her mind already running through possible scenarios. What did this man want? What brings you here today? She asked, her tone professional but inquisitive. Michael sat down across from her, his posture rigid, and looked her directly in the eye. I'll get straight to the point, he began. Your company has been under a lot of scrutiny lately, especially after the deal with Richard's firm fell through. Some of your investors are concerned. Tasha leaned back in her chair, listening intently. She had expected this. There were always people watching, always people questioning her moves. But she wasn't going to let anyone doubt her now. I'm well aware of the situation, she replied, her voice calm but firm. The deal with Richard was a step in the right direction, but it's only the beginning. I've already secured new partnerships and increased our revenue by 25% in the last quarter alone. Our growth trajectory is solid. Michael didn't seem impressed. He leaned forward, his eyes narrowing. That's all well and good, Ms. Williams. But the reality is that there's been too much negative press surrounding your leadership. Some of the investors are wondering if you're truly capable of steering this company in the right direction. Tasha felt a pang of frustration, but she kept her composure. She had dealt with worse. I've built this company from the ground up, she said, her voice firm, every word deliberate. I know exactly what I'm doing. I don't need to justify my position to anyone. Michael raised an eyebrow, but he didn't respond immediately. He studied her for a moment before continuing. I'm not here to undermine you, Ms. Williams. Quite the opposite. What I'm offering is a chance for us to reframe the narrative. We can work together to stabilize the company's image, strengthen investor confidence, and secure even more funding. But it'll require some changes. Tasha's eyes narrowed, a flicker of curiosity passing through her. What kind of changes? She asked. Michael smiled slightly, but there was no warmth in it. You'll need to make some strategic moves. A few key executives might need to be replaced, and we'll need to realign the company's direction. But if you're willing to do what it takes, you'll have our full support. Tasha leaned forward, her eyes locking with his. I don't need anyone's support to succeed, she said coldly. I've already shown what I'm capable of. And if you think for 1 second that I'm going to let anyone dictate how I run my company, you're mistaken. Michael's expression stiffened, but he didn't back down. I understand, he said, standing up. But you should know, Ms. Williams, that without the right backing, you won't be able to take this company to the next level. The pressure is mounting. Tasha stood up as well, her gaze unwavering. I've already reached the next level, she said, her voice like steel. And I don't need your backing. I'll do this on my terms or not at all. Michael's jaw tightened, but he said nothing. He turned and left the room, the door closing softly behind him. Tasha stood there for a moment, letting the silence settle around her. She had done it again. She had held her ground. And once again, she had proven that no one, not even the investors, could push her around. She wasn't going to let anyone stop her now. She had worked too hard to let anything, or anyone, stand in her way. Tasha walked into her office the next day, her mind sharp and focused, but there was a lingering sense of unease that wouldn't go away. After the meeting with Michael Davis, she couldn't help but feel that the pressure was building, both externally and internally. Her company was on the brink of a major breakthrough, but the more she succeeded, the more enemies she seemed to make. The weight of being the CEO of a growing company was heavier than she had anticipated. She had worked so hard to get here, to prove that a woman like her could lead a major corporation. But the more she achieved, the more people wanted to see her fail. Her phone buzzed, breaking her thoughts. A text from her assistant. There's someone here to see you. It's Richard. Cooper. He insists on talking to you. Tasha paused. Richard. After everything that had happened, she hadn't expected to hear from him again. She hadn't forgotten how he had treated her at the gala, or how he thought he could throw his weight around to control her. She was no longer that woman. She had proven herself, and she would prove it again. Send him in, she replied. The door opened a few moments later, and Richard walked in, his usual confident swagger present. But there was something different about him today. His smile was gone. There was no arrogance, no power play. just a man who seemed to have lost something. Tasha, he began, his voice unusually subdued. I need to talk to you. Tasha remained seated at her desk, her eyes never leaving him. What's this about, Richard? She asked, her tone cool but controlled. Richard hesitated, clearly unsure of how to approach the conversation. I made some mistakes, he said, rubbing the back of his neck. And I've been thinking about it. What I said at the gala, the way I treated you. It was wrong. I was wrong. Tasha could barely suppress a small smile, but she didn't let her guard down. You were wrong, Richard, but you're not the first person to underestimate me. Richard sighed, clearly frustrated with himself. I know that now. I was blinded by my own ego. I thought I could control the situation, control you. But I see now that I was mistaken. I've come to ask for your forgiveness. Tasha leaned back in her chair, her arms crossed. She studied him for a moment, considering his words. It was clear that he wasn't asking for forgiveness for the right reasons. He was asking because he needed something from her. Why are you really here, Richard? She asked, her voice unwavering. Richard shifted uncomfortably. I need your help, he admitted. There's been a shift in the board. My position is at risk. The deal you made with me, without it, my company could collapse. I need you to help me save it. Tasha's eyes narrowed. This was no apology. It was a plea for survival. And why should I help you? She asked, her tone sharp. After everything you did? After everything you said? Richard looked down, defeated. I deserve nothing from you, but I've learned the hard way that power is fragile. I can't do this alone. You're the one person who has the influence to turn things around. Tasha sat in silence for a long moment, her mind working through the possibilities. She didn't need Richard's help. She didn't know him anything, but there was something in his words, something that struck a chord with her. Maybe it was the recognition of her own power, the power to make a decision that could change the course of someone's future. She could help him, or she could let him fail. And in that moment, Tasha realized that she didn't need Richard. She didn't need anyone. She had everything she needed within herself. I'll think about it, she said coolly. But don't mistake my silence for weakness. I'm not the same person you mocked. Richard nodded, and for the first time, Tasha saw a flicker of genuine respect in his eyes. He left her office without another word, and as the door closed behind him, Tasha sat back in her chair, feeling the weight of her decision. She didn't know what the future would bring, but she knew that whatever happened, she would be the one in control. Tasha spent the following days focusing on the next phase of her company's growth. The deal with Richard was still fresh in her mind, but she pushed the thoughts aside as she sat at her desk, reviewing the financial reports. The numbers were looking promising, her decisions were paying off, but there was always something more to do. The phone buzzed again, breaking her concentration. She checked the screen. It was from Michael Davis, the investor who had previously expressed concerns about her leadership. We need to talk. Urgent. The message read. Tasha hesitated for a moment. She had hoped the chapter was closed, but something told her she couldn't ignore it. She dialed his number. Michael, what's going on? She asked, trying to keep her voice neutral. Tasha. Michael's voice was calm, but she could tell something was off. I need you to listen carefully. There are rumors circulating that your leadership is under question. Some of the key stakeholders in your latest deal are getting cold feet. Tasha felt a sharp pang in her chest. She had been working so hard, fighting for every inch. She wasn't about to let a few rumors knock her off course. And what exactly are these rumors? She asked, her voice steady, betraying none of the frustration building inside her. Michael hesitated before replying. They're saying that while you've secured great deals, you haven't proven you can maintain the momentum. There's talk that without the right backing, you might be heading toward a collapse. Investors are getting nervous. Tasha closed her eyes for a moment, her mind racing. She had anticipated this. It was always going to happen. Success invited scrutiny, and now the people who had doubted her were circling again, waiting for any weakness. I'm not going to let them control this, she said quietly, more to herself than to Michael. She could feel her resolve hardening. What's the next move? Michael was silent for a moment. I think we need to prove them wrong. You need to show them that this company, under your leadership, is stronger than ever. We have to make a statement, Tasha. You need to take control of the narrative. Tasha felt a fire building inside her. She wasn't just going to sit back and let others dictate her future. She had already been underestimated once, and now she would turn the tables. I will, she said firmly. Get me a meeting with the top stakeholders. Let's make it clear that I am the future of this company, not anyone else. Michael paused, then spoke again, his voice cautious. Are you sure? The stakes are high, Tasha. If we do this, there's no turning back. Tasha stood up, walking to the window of her office. She looked out at the city, the lights twinkling in the distance. She had worked too hard, faced too many obstacles to back down now. There's no turning back, she replied, her voice strong and unwavering. I've already proven myself. It's time to show them what I'm really capable of. The meeting was set for the next morning. As Tasha prepared for it, she felt a mix of anticipation and determination. This was her moment to prove once and for all that she was not just a survivor, but a leader. She had fought for every step, and now she was going to take what was rightfully hers. She wasn't going to let anyone, Michael, Richard, or anyone else, tell her what she could or couldn't do. This was just the beginning. Tasha stood at the front of the conference room, her heart pounding in her chest. The room was filled with the top stakeholders of the company, their faces a mixture of skepticism and anticipation. She had been preparing for this moment for weeks, but now that she was here, she couldn't help but feel the weight of the pressure. These were the people who held the keys to her company's future. They had the power to decide whether she would continue to lead or whether she would be replaced. She could feel the eyes of every person in the room on her, each of them waiting for her to say something, to give them a reason to believe in her. Tasha took a deep breath and straightened her shoulders, her eyes scanning the faces before her. She had fought too hard to get here to let anyone tear her down now. Thank you all for being here today, she began, her voice steady. I know that some of you have concerns about the direction of this company, and I understand that. But I'm here to tell you that the future is brighter than ever. This company has grown under my leadership, and it will continue to grow. We are on the edge of something great, and I am not going to let anyone stop us. She could feel the tension in the room shift as her words took hold. Some of the skeptical faces softened, while others remained cold and calculated. But Tasha wasn't here to win everyone over. She was here to make a statement. We've accomplished a lot, she continued, her voice gaining strength with each word. But we've only just begun. We are not going to sit back and let the world pass us by. We are going to take what we deserve, and we are going to do it together. She could see a few of the investors exchanging glances, but Tasha kept her focus. This wasn't about them. This was about her. She had built this company from the ground up, and she wasn't going to let anyone undermine her. I've heard the rumors, she said, her eyes locking with the man who had once doubted her. I know that some of you are questioning my leadership, but I am not going to let fear or doubt dictate my future. I am in control here, and I will prove that to all of you. The room was silent for a moment, the weight of her words hanging in the air. Then, slowly, a few of the investors began to nod. The tension started to ease, and for the first time since she entered the room, Tasha felt a glimmer of hope. I am not asking for your approval, she said firmly. I am telling you that I am the future of this company. If you choose to stand with me, we will achieve greatness. If not, then I will move forward without you. She let her words linger in the room, allowing the gravity of what she had said to sink in. Then she turned and walked to the door, her head held high. She didn't need their approval. She didn't need anyone's approval. She had already proven herself, and no one could take that away from her. As she stepped into the hallway, she felt a sense of calm wash over her. She had done what needed to be done. The future was hers to shape, and no one, not even the people in that room, could stand in her way. Tasha sat in her office, staring at the phone on her desk. The meeting with the stakeholders had gone better than she expected. They were on board and the deal was set. But as she leaned back in her chair, she couldn't shake the feeling that this victory, as sweet as it was, wasn't the end. She had proven herself, yes, but now the real test was ahead. It wasn't just about leading a company, it was about keeping it at the top. She picked up the phone and dialed the number she had been avoiding. Richard Cooper, the man who had once mocked her, who had tried to use his power to control her. He had been silent since their last encounter, but now she needed to hear from him. The phone rang twice before he picked up. Tasha. His voice was clipped, his tone formal. Richard, I'm calling to let you know that the deal is finalized, she said, keeping her voice calm. Your company's sponsorship is still in place, but only because I chose to honor it. I could have walked away, and you would have been left with nothing. There was a pause on the other end of the line, and for a moment Tasha wondered if he was going to hang up. But then, he spoke, his voice lower, more composed than before. I never thought you would walk away, Tasha, he said. I misjudged you. You've made your point. I see that now. She could hear the change in his tone, and it was satisfying. Richard Cooper wasn't used to being wrong, and admitting it was something she never thought she would hear from him. I've built this company, Richard, she said, her voice firm, and I've built it on my terms. Don't forget that. There was a silence between them, but this time it wasn't uncomfortable. It was understanding. Richard finally spoke again, this time with a hint of respect. I won't forget, he said, and I won't stand in your way. Tasha put down the phone and stared out the window. The city below seemed different somehow, as if it were opening up to her in a way it never had before. She had made it. She had faced down every challenge, every doubt, and had come out on top. But this was just the beginning. As the sun dipped below the horizon, Tasha knew that the real work was only starting. She wasn't just going to settle for success. She was going to redefine what success meant. And anyone who thought they could stand in her way would soon realize that she had only just begun.